Welcome to All Saints Church in Hastings Old Town. Sitting on top of a small hill, just at the top end of All Saints Street. This massively huge belfry has a large churchyard that actually contains some very interesting tombs, graves, particularly those of Napoleonic soldiers, Masons, people that were at the Battle of Waterloo. So the church was built in the English perpendicular style between 1417 and 1430, and despite some refurbishment, obviously, very little has actually changed since then. And if you look up, you can see the Doom painting. Let's talk about that. Here we have the Doom painting. It's one of 3, or is it 4, that still exists within the country. This is the one in All Saints Hastings, obviously. There's also another one in Salisbury, and there is another one in Coventry. When medieval churches were built, they were actually exceptionally ornate. They were paintings all over the walls. If you go to the church in Pickering in Yorkshire, North Yorkshire, they're fantastic paintings all over the walls. This particular painting was uncovered in 1870 when refurbishment was going on, discovered underneath the whitewash, and was refurbished again and restored in 1935. It's quite a primitive painting, but also incredibly important. It shows God, Jesus Christ, sitting in the middle on a throne, sitting on a rainbow. Or he has the Virgin Mary on one side, he has John the Baptist on the other side. If you looked to the right, you can see a devil or a demon or something, and somebody being hung on a gibbet, and this would be the way to hell. And then on the left hand side you have heaven or Jerusalem. Not quite sure what God, Jesus Christ, is sitting on. It looks like a load of starfish. But in those days, of course, people were illiterate, and this was a way of getting people to understand the biblical stories. This is William Prestwick. He was the first rector of the church, and he's the person that built it. We don't think this was the first church in Hastings Old Town or the first church on the site, because there are various Saxon remains, and later I'll take you to show you a Saxon cross on the outside of the church, which was put there when it was built. And there's also something very interesting to look at in the tower. Here we have the royal arms of George II. There was a government decree in 1755. Here we are in the Lady Chapel of the church. Now, all churches have a Lady Chapel. The Lady Chapel is a small chapel that's used for smaller services, and it's dedicated to Our Lady, that is Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ. Very simple, plain Lady Chapel, but here we are. The windows, they're all 19th and 20th century windows. Beautiful light in this church, particularly on this glorious sunny afternoon in July. In the Lady Chapel, here we have the brass, which represents Thomas and Margaret Goodenough. Thomas was the bailiff of Hastings in 1515. He died in about 1520 and was posthumously given the title of mayor. Here's the war memorial, highly polished, so you probably can't see it at all. The brass cleaners in this parish are very good at their job. It has a number of names on it: Vaness, White, named Fisher family names, which would still known around the Hastings Old Town. This church was known as the Fisherman's Church. It's the church that the fishermen went to. St Clement's on the other side of the valley, that was the town church. That was on the western side, and that was for the more well-to-do. This church, although it's more ornate, was the Fisherman's Church. So here we have the high altar. These days there's also a forward altar in this church, and most of the business actually happens here down in front with the congregation. The high altar was originally there. In fact, when the church was built, the high altar would have been against the wall, and the priest would have consecrated the sacraments and all that kind of thing with their back to the congregation. And as time has moved on, these things have been brought forward actually into the congregation. When this church was built, there would be a rood screen across the front of the chancel so that the hoi polloi couldn't see all the wonderful things that were going up here at the high altar. In front of the high altar, we've got the chancel where the choir sit, and then the high altar itself is in the area known as the sanctuary. The cross and candlesticks, by the way, they have come from All Souls up in the Ore Valley. When that church closed, some of the materials were brought down here, and we have their cross, we have their candles, and we also have their thurible, which is what the incense is swung in on special occasions. There are beautiful carvings on the choir stalls. Here we've got a dragon or a griffin, and then if we go down, we can see a beautiful angel. Each side of the high altar we have these fantastic paintings. Here we have St George and St Wilfrid. If we pan across, we go across the fantastic 1850s window, which we'll come back to, and then on the other side we have St Augustine and St Richard. The window itself depicts the crucifixion, and it's almost like a film set. You've got the crucifixion, you've got the witnesses, you've got Jerusalem behind, and it's just a beautiful piece of work. To the right of the altar, we have another window, and below that where the acolytes and servers sit, and to the left of that, restored piscina. The piscina is the place where the bread and wine are or were prepared. They're prepared on the altar, but afterwards, what would happen is that the washed vessels would be washed here, because it was very important once the wine has been consecrated, that even if there's the smallest bit of wine left in the chalice, that must not be just thrown away or thrown down a drain or anything like that. It either all has to be consumed by the priest or by somebody else, and if it cannot be, then it would go through the piscina, and there's a small hole which would then carry that water down to the soil, because the only other place to put it is the soil. And then to the left of the altar, we have the aumbry, and the aumbry is the place where the reserved sacrament is kept, so that the blessed bread and blessed wine can be kept there, so it can be taken to the sick as and when required. There is none in there at the moment, because the light above the aumbry is off. If the Blessed Sacrament is in there, that light would be on. Here we have what the church is probably most famous for, the Father Willis organ. Most of it you can't see; it's all hidden behind the wall and in the organ loft. But Father Willis was one of the premier organ builders. And it was put here in 1878. It's an extremely famous organ, very well known. It's what the very few listed organs in the country, and this is one of them. And people come from all over the world to play on this particular organ. And if you come here and look at come to one of the organ concerts, not only is it an amazing experience, but they put a screen up so you can see the organist actually playing the machine. Wonderful. Okay, so part of the church where you don't usually get to have a look. Let's go up and have a look at the belfry. You know, it's always further than you think it is coming up here. So here we are in the bell ringing chamber. So here's the other side of the Father Willis organ. It's got 3 manuals, 25 stops. It can produce 1,000 sounds, and it's tonally unchanged since it was built, which is why it's so interesting. I mean, people are always talking about why does the church need money and so on. Well, they say this is a nationally significant organ, and it costs an absolute fortune just to keep it going and just to keep it there. And I don't know if you can see the pipes behind there. I've been very fortunate because the server's vestry, where the people that serve at the altar get dressed, is actually inside the organ, and I've stood in there at the end of a service just getting changed, and the vibrations coming through me are these fantastic pipes. It really is a wonder to behold. Let's just have a look at a couple of the windows. That's Jesus in the temple. And the Nativity. Coats of arms can be seen along the nave. They're funeral hatchments which were left here in the 17th and 18th century after the funeral of rich people within the town. The roof is interesting. The roof was built in the same way as an upside down boat. And you may just see a small window up there in the roof. That is actually the belfry, where the bell ringers can look down and see what's going on. And here we have the west window. There are some fascinating carvings in the tower. If we look straight up the tower, we can see the roundel. The roundel actually surrounds the trapdoor that the bells will be lifted up into the tower, but around the roundel we have these interesting animals. Before the church was refurbished relatively recently, these were all painted in gaudy colours, but English Heritage told us that they should just be painted plain, which I feel is a bit of a shame. This is a belfry that is free for all those civil, and if you please, to chime or ring is a very pleasing thing. There is no music played or fung, like bells when they're well rung. Then ring your bells well if you can. Silence is best for every man. But if you ring in spur or hat, 6pence you pay, be sure of that. And if a bell you overthrow, pray pay a groat before you go. 1756. Okay, so part of the church where you don't usually get to have a look. Let's go up and have a look at the belfry. You know, it's always further than you think it is coming up here. So here we are in the bell ringing chamber. So we have a ring of 8 bells here. The colours of the sallies are interesting. There's a town in South Belgium called At, and these are actually the colours of that town. And we have deliberately used those colours because every year they have a festival very similar to Jack in the Green that some of us go to, and they have a massive bell that they ring. And of course the tenor sally has the colours of the Cinque Ports. I was showing you the roundel earlier with the animals around it. I said, but that's where the bells are brought up. Here's the top end of it. You can see a little hole there. That hole is the hole that at one point a rope would have gone down to ring the Sanctus bell. All sorts of bell ringing paraphernalia up here. This is an appeal. At various points and times there have been peals rung for various things, for coronations, silver jubilees and so on, and these peals are then recorded up here. I was showing you the small window from downstairs where the choir can, the bell ringers I mean, can look down at the choir and see what's going on. Here it is now, it's now bricked up, which is just as well because it'd be a long way to fall, but you can open that grille and have a look. And I'm not sure if you can just about see the high altar down there. This is probably one of the most fascinating things here. It was under a lot of sand. This has just been moved about. And then we noticed one day that actually there's a carving there. And this carving is quite rudimentary, but what's different about it is that it's not on the same kind of rock as elsewhere. The other pieces of rock, they've all been hand carved, they're all nice and square. And here we have just this lump of rock. We're not quite sure what it is. It looks a bit like a boat, or it could be a sacred heart, or it could be an anchor. If it's an anchor cross, which is extremely likely, it's very important because it means it's one of the earliest Christian carvings in the country, let alone Hastings, because it would have been Roman. So this is something that's almost certainly been put up here out of the way of the rest of the church, rather interestingly. When this church was built, it's a bit of a mystery. If anybody knows exactly what it is, we'd be really pleased to hear. But we know whatever it is, it's important. So here we are actually in the bell chamber itself. The bells are on these wheels and they swing round backwards and forwards. This thing's called the stay and stops the bell swinging right over. 8 large bells. You wouldn't want to come up here when the bells are ringing, it wouldn't be safe. Tons of metal swinging around. You can actually feel the tower swinging. And this bell here is of particular interest. It's dated 1604. Which means that this bell has rung for virtually every significant event in this town since that time. For coronations, for royal funerals, for curfews, and in particular this bell was rung for the gunpowder plot in 1605 and was also rung to warn that Cromwell's troops were approaching the town in the English Civil War. We've had special permission to come up here because it is dangerous. In Old Town Week, very often we do bring people up here and show them around, but it has to be at your own risk. This, looking once again at this 1604 bell, I can feel underneath that it's not flat, and this is because when the bells are tuned, they used to chip bits off it with a hammer until it was right, to get the right tuning on the bell. And the more modern bells, they're skimmed. The bell is quite easy to tip backwards and forwards. I'm not going to tip it too far, because if it went over, I would be in trouble with the bell captain, and what's more, I'd probably pull my arm off. But if I could, if I pulled on the rope, actually get it to chime. If you want to hear what the bell sounds like, there we are. And now for the special part of the tour, because nobody's allowed up here. It's far too dangerous. The steps are incredibly narrow, and it's a long way down, and we don't want anybody to fall off. But here we are, actually at the top of All Saints Tower. I don't think I need to say anything. I'm just going to show you around the old town. Well, I said I wasn't going to say anything, but it certainly upset the seagulls. Here on the south door, just above the south door, is the Saxon cross from an earlier Christian building in Hastings.